Hugh, it's good to be on with you. At least the Razorbacks didn't lose this weekend since they had to bye. We can't say the same thing for the Browns.
No, in fact, I've told everyone that no Broncos fans are allowed to call. In fact, no one from Denver is allowed to call today. So you're kind of their surrogate. You got one punch in. Senator Cotton, the big deal this week is Thursday. Mrs. Clinton testifies in front of the Select Committee on Benghazi with many of your old colleagues, including your close friend Mike Pompeo. And well, let me play for you Hillary's attempt to shape the narrative. It's her cut from Friday with Jake Tapper, cut number 1.
You're scheduled to testify before the Benghazi Committee at the House of Representatives in a few days. What are you expecting, and how are you preparing?
I really don't know what to expect. I think it's pretty clear that whatever they might have thought they were doing, they ended up becoming a partisan arm of the Republican National Committee with an overwhelming focus on trying to, as they admitted, drive down my poll numbers. I've already testified about Benghazi. I testified to the best of my ability before the Senate and the House. I don't know that I have very much to add. This is, after all, the 8th investigation. Other committees of the Congress, standing committees with very experienced members and staff, have all looked into this and basically just rejected the conspiracy theories that are still floating out there in some circles. So I really don't know. I will do my best to answer their questions, but I don't really know what their objective is right now.
So, Tom Cotton, that is an all-purpose defense that answers everything and nothing at all. Is it going to be sufficient to the day?
No, Hugh, it won't be. Remember, the Benghazi Committee is about the murder of 4 Americans committed by Islamic terrorists outside our consulate there. There are still serious questions about why Hillary Clinton and State Department officials ignored security threats before the attack, but exactly what happened and how they responded to the attack, and then how they investigated and changed certain practices after the attack. Hillary Clinton is using the old lawyer saw that if you have the facts, pound the facts. If you have the law, pound the law. If you have neither, pound your opponent. And that's exactly what she's doing, impugning the character of very fine, upstanding members of Congress who are trying to get to the truth about what happened in Benghazi. During the course of that investigation, it turns out that they uncovered emails that Hillary Clinton had been using on a private server. That wasn't the purpose of the investigation, but it was uncovered. And we now know, in fact, that she didn't just have a private server, but she deleted 30,000 emails before she turned them over to the State Department. And I would submit that on an entirely separate front, that is far below the standard of care and diligence that we would expect from a Secretary of State, and certainly that we would expect from a Commander-in-Chief, given the fact that it's now obvious that classified information was contained in that private server, which Barack Obama's own Deputy Director of the CIA has said was no doubt accessed by the Russian and the Chinese intelligence services.
She has also said in this interview with Jake Tapper that nothing was marked classified. Tom Cotton, again, for the benefit of the audience, does it matter what something is marked as to whether or not it is classified?
No, Hugh, of course it doesn't. Much information is inherently classified. You cannot discuss the identity of CIA sources, for instance, without knowing that that's inherently classified, or certain conversations with high-level officials from foreign governments. Anyone who's been in government for as long as Hillary Clinton has will certainly know that that information is classified. It doesn't matter if her aides stripped off the classification markings before they sent it to her private server. More importantly, it raises the question of why she would be using a private, unsecure server to begin with to conduct official business in the State Department. That's something that many other officials in the Obama administration have said they did not do. It's something that even the current director of the National Security Agency has said would present a serious opportunity for foreign intelligence services to hack.
Now, Senator Cotton, it seems to me that if I were running this, I would begin there, without any preliminaries, just with the simple question, Mrs. Clinton, is it necessary for a document to be marked classified to be classified? And then not leave that until she answers the obvious question, which is yes, because that gives away the whole game. But that requires coordination and discipline. Now, we have prosecutors on this committee in Susan Brooks and Trey Gowdy, and we have very fine lawyers in Mike Pompeo and Pete Roscom, and we've got very sharp people in Lynn Westmoreland and others. But do you think they can maintain focus, and given the way that hearings work?
Yes, Hugh, I do believe the hearing will be conducted in a professional and diligent manner. Trey Gowdy is a fine and deeply experienced prosecutor who's acquitted himself with the highest level of professionalism and integrity in this entire investigation. So I do believe that there'll be a hearing that is focused on the serious matters at hand, which is how 4 Americans were murdered by Islamic terrorists in our consulate in Benghazi.
Now, let me switch to the upheavals in the House and how they're impacting the Senate. Have you learned today anything new that my audience should know about whether or not Paul Ryan is getting closer or not closer to be running for Speaker to replace John Boehner, Tom Cotton?
No, Hugh, I haven't, but I have to confess that I haven't been digging for information either, and neither the Senate nor the House is voting today, so not many people are in Washington to have these conversations. I can't say what's going to happen in the House, obviously. I'm not in the House. I do have friends over there, though, and I know that a lot of people in the House simply want to see a more open and reform process that's less top-down, less power concentrated in the hands of the Speaker, whoever the Speaker may be, whether it's Paul Ryan or whether it's some other candidate. And I think if you look at the original intent behind the House, that it was going to be the representative body most closely connected to the people, that there's a lot of merit in that, in ensuring that you have the kind of bottom-up policy-making process that the founders envisioned in the House, not a top-down process.
Now, on Thursday of last week, your old friend from the House, Mike Pompeo, with whom you've traveled the world, said very explicitly, if Paul Ryan does not run, my hat's in the ring. Do you think he'll get support from all corners?
Well, I think Mike is a very smart, very talented veteran of our Army and also very widely respected within the Congress. So if Mike chooses to run for the Speaker of the House, the Republican Party could do much worse than to rally behind him because I think he's got the wits. I think he's got the kind of legislative canny, and I think he is, has good relationships across the entire House caucus.
Senator Cotton, I've learned that there are rhythms in politics, and they're usually after very intense weeks, and last week was one because of the Democratic debate. There's usually a slow week that arcs up to the end, and this, with Hillary's testimony coming on the 22nd, and then the speakership election perhaps on Thursday, we're going to have a couple of slow days here where people are huddled around somewhere. What's going on in the meantime about the defense appropriations? Because the military is certainly waiting around to find out if they get any money.
Well, Hugh, for the record, I was traveling throughout the Middle East last week, so I skipped the Democratic debate. If I had been in the United States, I still would have skipped it and watched the baseball game, though.
Where were you in the Middle East?
Senator McConnell leads a trip every 2 years with a lot of the new senators, and we went to Israel and Jordan, Iraq, Kuwait, and Afghanistan to visit with our troops and their commanders and our ambassadors and the leaders of those countries as well. And I can tell you, since you brought up the National Defense Authorization Act, that the leaders of those countries, as well as a lot of our country team and our embassies, are very worried about the budget situation. They're very worried about the level of defense spending. The National Defense Authorization Act passed with over 70 votes in the Senate, almost 300 votes in the House. President Obama is still threatening to veto that bill, though, because he is demanding that there be a $1 increase in domestic spending for every $1 we have in defense spending. This is, in my opinion, wrong-headed for at least 2 reasons. One, the Authorization Act doesn't actually spend money. It simply authorizes all the various programs that our military needs so badly. And two, I don't think $1 of spending is the same across all federal agencies and departments. There's nothing more important that the federal government does than keep America safe, to defend Americans and our interests around the world. That's very different from pork barrel spending to support some congressman or senator's pet project. So I wish that the president would stop playing politics with the defense budget and just move forward with it, and then we can deal with the rest of it soon, because we just announced that we're extending the stay of troops in Afghanistan, and Vladimir Putin continues to challenge us around the world, and we simply need more money in our defense budget to meet the threats that we face. And
very quickly, when you went to Israel, had the Intifada started up?
And, yeah, it was very much underway, Hugh, and it's a complete and amazing tragedy. Every day you have Jews that are being stabbed as they walk down the street, as they go to a market, as they board a bus, with no grounds whatsoever. There was no pretext for this. There was no single thing that you can point to. We met with the Prime Minister. We met with President Abbas. And if President Abbas and some of the Palestinian leadership would stop their incitement and stop spreading rumors, then we might have to see calm. But until then, Israel has to take the steps necessary to defend their citizens, just as our government would if Americans were being stabbed when they walked down the streets or walked into a mall or boarded a bus.
Absolutely. Senator Tom Cotton, thank you for joining us.